Well, good evening and welcome back to another episode of Second and Saints. You guys keep coming back, so I guess we're doing something pretty decent stuff. I mean, maybe you're just bored or something, but at any rate, appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. We're just first day into Saints minicamp. Ross, how you doing this evening? Got some sun today? Fun?
Yeah, man. Jeez. Yeah, for real. I got my tan going. You can't tell, but it's here.
Same.
Yeah, for real. It's been great, man. I'm
That's
glad
my watch
to be here.
line.
Oh, good. You should. What's crazy for me? What's crazy for me is the sock line, like where the socks and shoes start.
I'm an ankle sock guy.
That's insane. Like my feet have a much higher credit score than the rest of me. It's insane. But no, other than that, it's been fine. It was hot today, but I'm glad to be here, man. How you holding up?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Good. Just just taking it day by day, as Chasing says. Take one day at a time. One day at a time. That's how everybody does, So
that's it.
Lot to get into tonight, guys. I mean, we had our first of 3 days for minicamp, and so you get us for obviously 3 days straight, and that could be good, that could be bad. Yeah, you never know. But
it's all good.
Look,
only great.
I think. Yeah, only great. So appreciate you guys tuning in. And then obviously if you got questions, be sure to drop them. We already got one before we even went on the air today. So David asked, I want to just jump and knock it out because it is pretty straightforward. He clarified the next comment, but he listened to Darren Rizzi's press conference on special teams today, which again, not many people probably care, but there is so much information that Darren Rizzi has talked about for this new kickoff rule and how the Saints are going to go about it. So look, I'd encourage you guys to check it out. I know this is probably some people are like, well, it doesn't matter. And again, it's not a problem unless it's a problem. Right. And so, but he wants to know about the new onside kick rule. I can give it to you real quick, or Ross, do you want to kind of break it down?
No, go for it. Go for it. I mean, it's pretty simple. The big thing that I want to say that's different is that you have to declare and let everybody know that the onside kick is happening. I think that's kind of a big wrinkle right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, there is no more surprise onside kicks, so you can only do 2, and it has to be in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's really the long and the short of it. I mean, and it still applies to the new kick formations, which I don't know if everybody can see, but Ross made an excellent drawing because we got to talk to Riz a little bit. I don't know if you could see it, but it just kind of gives a little bit more illustration.
Do this, and then if I focus in a little bit, maybe
there it is.
It's in there. It's in there. None of this means anything to you, but it means something to me.
I would say this though, there is something to point out because it's a great comment that he made. I thought was fascinating. The fact that if you the 20-yard line and less is considered out of bounds, right? So like under the old rule, like if you were to field a kick and it was going maybe to the 2-yard line and you put a foot out of bounds, then that's a flag and you get the ball on the 35-yard line. Now you can do that same thing within a 20-yard radius, and I think that's pretty big.
Yeah, I think that's huge because the idea is that location now matters for kickoffs to where you have to kick off and get it within the 20 in order for it to be returnable. If it doesn't get to the 20 and it drops at the 21, if it drops at the 30, the 40, whatever, that ball advances all the way to the 40-yard line. And so the big thing that you're looking at here is now you could straddle the 20-yard line and end up catching something with 1 foot at the 21 and another foot at the 19, and you get the ball at the 40-yard line off of that, which is a pretty good situation to be in. So yeah, there's some nice stuff there in terms of being able to take advantage of some gamesmanship and all this. And one of the other things that I really like that Darren Rizzi talked about and that he said was that this now becomes the opening kickoff becomes the first play of offense and defense now, because you got to do something with it, and you're not going to be as willing to just kick the ball out the back of the end zone. The NFL wants returns. This rule gets them returns.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. You can go back to last week's show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that fun stuff. But you can go back, we timestamp everything too. So we've talked plenty about this new kickoff rule. We've talked about some of the things Rizzi's told us and just kind of the insight and how you're going to see different formations on teams and everybody's getting some work. I mean, look, you got guys like Jamal Williams, A.T. Perry taking special teams reps right now. You've got Bub Means doing. I mean, there are a lot of players that you wouldn't normally. That's one thing I put on my observations today, which go to Saints News Network, si.com/NFL/Saints. Shameless plug about all the notes and observations. Ross put a fantastic piece out there on Dallin Holker.
Thanks,
so,
man.
Yeah, check out that because he got to talk to Clancy Barone today. But, again, you look at it, it's going to be a fascinating, thing to see unfold, and you can't just boot it and without consequences now, and it's going to liven up the game. So I'm really talking about bringing some excitement to this table and stuff. I'm ready to see it. I lived through the days when we had the returners, just all the greats, the Mel Grays, the Johnny Baileys, Tamarick Vanovers, all those guys. That's my scene mostly, but obviously it goes in further than that and such. So good things to see out of it. But transitioning, Ross, the biggest thing for today, Marshon Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, as Dennis Allen said he expected them to be. We're at mandatory minicamp. We'll get into attendance here in a little bit. But obviously, good news, and it tracks with everything we've been told. We've told you guys. And again, we give you some things. We don't always put it out on social media because, A, I don't want people to vulture it. And B, you can learn something from us watching it and stuff. But Lattimore dialed in right now. All the stuff, the personal stuff, he said he talked to DA and we're good. There were some personal things, and again, I might have shared some of that insight, but it was you could probably put two and two together. But again, know a little bit about what was going on there, and things are okay now. And Kamara going to this other question about talking about OTAs, and we make so much about OTAs, and it's so, again, it's voluntary, right? And some people have things going on and such. And I get it. We talked about the optics of it and, guys like Kamara, but man, he's excited about this offense. But let's start with Marshon Lattimore. He's here. He's dialed in. He was getting first team reps, obviously, along opposite of Paulson Adebo, who was back today. We're glad to see that as well.
Yeah.
This team gets so much exponentially better. Well, they get exponentially better. Let me English real quick. Exponentially better with Marshon Lattimore on the field. But just kind of talk about, what your impressions are seeing him today, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think attendance is one thing, but then participation was the other thing that I was looking for. Marshon Lattimore, what was not the coolest day in New Orleans. We saw several players have to maybe pull up a little bit. They went to the sideline, took some breaks every now and then, all that. Marshon Lattimore played basically every single snap that was available to him. And to me, that was a big thing that I really wanted to see. Is he out on the field the entire time? How's his conditioning? I don't think that, and let me be very, very clear. When I say I wanted to see if he was going to be out on the field the entire time, I don't mean anything about a want or desire to be out on the field. I mean strictly is he conditioned? This was Marshon Lattimore's first team sanctioned practice since November. And so with all of that in mind, and then you get out there in this heat, he took every snap, was there for all the individual drills. He got beat by Chris Olave down the left sideline in 7-on-7s, but then came back and had a pass breakup. Yeah, really, really good throw by Derek Carr. And then came back and had a pass breakup later on in team drills against Chris Olave in a jump ball situation. So you saw him forget. You saw him go out there and, look like it was the first time that he practiced since November, and then very quickly turn that off. So I was pretty excited about what we saw from Marshon. I thought that the fact that he was out there the entire time and continuing to put work in, I think that was the biggest thing. I think that to me was kind of the biggest takeaway with him.
Yeah, and to be fair, Marshon got him back a little bit later in that end of half sequence that they were working on. He had a nice pass breakup on Olave. And so, look, again, I think this team, we've talked about it too much. And sorry, guys, I was fiddling. I didn't plug in my, MacBook. So that would be tragic if it would just go off in the middle of things. But at any rate, getting Lattimore back out here. just a healthy big sign for him. And again, we know the 2 years injuries, he brought it up. He talked about it. The personal stuff, everything has been said about it. Everybody trying to trade him on their son. We told you guys that some of this stuff just wasn't happening, but I think this is the season. Off season leads to too much misinformation. But man, it's good to see Marshon Lattimore out there. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, if Lattimore can stay healthy and he can be healthy, I think the sky's the limit. The defense, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, the Saints defense is just so much better with Marshon Lattimore in it. And he can take away half the field. And then you add in the other elements. You got Tyron back there, Paulson Adebo, the way he plays, Alante learning the slot, Kool-Aid McKinstry, who can be playing outside or in the slot, based on what Dennis Allen said today. And then you got Jonathan Abram, Jordan Howden on the back end. I like what Will Harris is bringing to the table. I mean, what's the ceiling for this Saints defense? What is the main thing? And we've kind of talked about it, but what are we concerned about mostly right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now is just defensive line play, right? And I think that's both in the pass rush and in the run game. We can't forget about the run game. We've seen the team really get some nice play in the run game here recently. Pete Werner was really, really good in terms of his run fits and things like that today. Christian Boyd, their 6th round selection, looked fantastic all through OTAs as well. So maybe that's where they are progressing and getting better for sure. But I think that's just kind of the biggest question mark right now. And part of that is just by virtue of what rookie minicamps and OTAs are. You're not actually seeing anybody tackle anybody. You're not actually seeing anybody go full physical with anybody, stuff like that. And so I think that those are the things that I would look at and say, okay, well, that's where the biggest question mark is, because we won't really get the chance to see that until preseason games. And that's assuming that your starters play. We might not really get the opportunity to see that until the starters play in the preseason, which might be even later in the preseason. So I would say that is, for me, the biggest thing right now. And maybe when pads go on, things get a little bit better too during training camp. Maybe just a little bit more, but I don't really ever fully take anything away from trench play until we're actually seeing live bullets. And until we see that point, that's going to be my biggest question mark right now. But I think that the ceiling for the defense is as high as it's always been, because they've maintained the talent over on that side of the football.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, can you get a pass rush going, a consistent pass rush, and can you finish plays? That's the biggest things that I want to see out of this defense. And it falls on the line, right? I think they can be better against the run. I think he can be better against mobile quarterbacks with the addition of Willie Gay Jr. I think there's a lot of good depth there. But for me, it's, can you affect the quarterback and give the secondary what they need to make the plays and generate the pressure? Because I can't tell you how many times we see almost sacks or almost this, and that's like maddening, because they got to win those one-on-one matchups. They got to get there quicker. And so I think they have the potential in some aspects, but a lot of that's going to rely on, where Chase Young's at and where Cam Jordan, how he utilized. I think Carl Granderson speaks for himself, but role players, Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey, where are they going to fit in this sub rush package? I think there's ways you can get creative, but it remains to be seen. But it's funny you bring up the pads and all that other stuff. I mean, I was talking to John Bitton today, their offensive line coach, and I just kind of blatantly asked, as like, look, what do you look for? Because, he made the comment that you really can't look at pads. And he said the hope is that everybody's learning the offense. By the time you put on the pads, it'll speak for itself, right? And he stressed athleticism, he stressed footwork, talked about how much wider they're going to play on the line and such.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that we're already seeing too.
Yeah, and there's just so many elements to that. But we've cautiously told you guys that, you're not going to be able to judge offensive linemen and the defensive line play really until we get contact. Now, things like Trevor Penning being on the ground, that's a little bit concerning sometimes, but I didn't think he did.
Stayed mostly upright today.
Yeah, stayed mostly upright. So I don't think there's anything crazy, but as you move along, it's good to see Marshon back out there. And we'll talk about AK in just a second. Just answer some of the questions. Jono asks, Hey, Jono, welcome. It is Tuesday, which we just finished, Wednesday and Thursday. That is the 3-day mini camp. And then we have a lull until training camp, which will be July 24th. And so we're looking forward to it. But just to answer that one real quick, let's talk about Alvin Kamara, because there's some other ones in here. We're going to talk about Dallin Holker, of course, but Alvin Kamara just being here and just the excitement level, I think is what everybody should take away first. That he's excited about this offense, and I think everybody is, right? And we reported a long time ago, back February, when it was the combine, that him and Taysom Hill were both in the plans for the Saints in this year. I don't know. Sometimes if you listen to us, we might be able to tell you some things, but again, I don't think there was ever a point where they're like, oh, let's trade Kamara, let's do this. But they did need to find a better way to use him. They do need, because it's just, I don't want to sound like I'm taking shots, but it was just too vanilla and it's too predictable with a guy like Alvin Kamara when you were running the same type of offense that you ran for 16 years. But, look, I think getting him out in space and creating some different things and letting him do what Alvin Kamara does best is only going to benefit the Saints offense. And I think the sky's the limit for somebody like him.
Yeah, I completely agree. And look, we got to see it right off the bat. I mean, the first play in team drills that wasn't a sack was thrown to Alvin Kamara in the flat. And then we also got to see Alvin Kamara a lot more outside zone. And it's funny because if you look at and this is where I'm going to use Darren Rizzi's line here and tell you that sometimes numbers can be deceitful, numbers can lie. They don't always tell the whole story. If you look at Alvin Kamara's numbers, he actually ran way more zone run scheme last year than he ran man run. But the difference is where were those zone runs going? And the majority of them went right up the middle. There's inside zone and outside zone. So it was great to see today a lot more of Alvin Kamara in space, running the outside zone runs, taking the stretch runs. I don't think we saw him on a pitch today, but we saw a lot of pitching today, and all that. And we saw some really successful pitch runs as well. So I'm excited to see Alvin Kamara get a little bit more involved in that. I think the trick is right now is just balancing the work for him. It's only 3 days. And so you'd love to see him be a little bit more involved, but with his first day back and then with so many running backs that are performing well in this offense, you got to give a lot of guys reps. And so I'm looking forward to watching his reps tick up a little bit here as minicamp goes along. But I think that the way that I would say it is that Alvin Kamara should feel right at home back in this type of system in terms of playing to his strengths. And this is what we highlighted last week too. The Saints are on the offensive side doing the things that they need to do to put their players in position to play to their strengths, to succeed. And I think that's something we haven't always seen from this team here as of late.
Yeah, again, like I said, it's a novel concept to put your best players in a position to succeed. I don't know who thought that up.
Yeah, who'd have thunk?
Checks notes smart, like I said. And look, I think with Kamara, here's the thing that resonates with me. Last year, the Saints were the only team that didn't have a running back that had a 20-yard rush or more. Right. That was Taysom Hill and Lynn Bowden Jr. Yeah. That was just insane to me. And so I think when you get those toss plays or those outside zones or those different looks, Kamara has really good vision. And of course, his balance is really good. And of course, he can make players miss in the tackling aspect and such. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And I think it only bodes well for the Saints offense.
Yeah. I mean, look, think about it. If you have the option to run to the line, if you have the option to run up the middle of the field or run to either side, running to either side makes more sense. It's why everybody always talks about get the sideline, win the sideline. If you can win the sideline as a running back, you're going to maximize your protection. And it's a numbers game. You look at a defense that has 11 players, 4 down linemen, let's call it 2 linebackers or 3 linebackers. Let's call it a front 7, right? And then 2 safeties in the middle of the field. That's 9 of the 11 players are all in the middle of the field. So the more that you run up the middle, you're just running into the wealth of the defense. Whereas if you're getting to the strong side, you're maybe putting your running back in position to have to get through 6 people. If you're running to the weak side, you're maybe putting your guy in position to have to only fight through 5 people. It's just a simple numbers game. And that's a really rudimentary way to look at it. If any running back coach or offensive line coach or defensive coach just heard me say that, they're cursing at me right now. I know it's not that simple. Don't get me wrong, but it's a simple numbers game of just trying to fight the idea of flow and congestion. We understand how football works. We understand how the players are trained to get to the football. It's a lot easier to get to the football when you bring it right to them.
Yeah. And again, I'll say this too, just talking with John Benton, the thing he stressed was athleticism from that offensive line. A lot of those players have bulked up, and so I think And some of the other things, like he said, and again, we look so much on the emphasis of the first offensive line, but guys like Lucas Patrick and Justin Herron have been in systems like this before.
Yep.
So it also bodes
Lemieux
well.
well.
It's Shane Lemieux. So, just the days of having your offensive line go a full 17 games aren't happening, right? So you're going to have injuries at some point. And so I feel pretty good about where those guys are at the moment in terms of their, depth with potential upside starting. So we'll see how it plays out.
O-line is still my biggest question again, still on the team. But again, it's just like we talked about the defensive line. A big part of it is that like you can't answer those questions right now.
Right. Exactly. And you really won't get much, but like we pointed out before in previous episodes, boy, they're going to be tested in week 2 against Dallas and week 3 against the Eagles. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. I mean, you're going to see some in preseason. You're going to see some against joint practices in the 49ers, but when it matters, when it counts, week 2, week 3, that's really going to be where I think that we'll see whether this could go to the wayside or maybe we got something here, because those are 2 big tests to go against in San Francisco too, but obviously it's a little bit different how that goes. Let's talk Dallin Holker. How is Dallin Holker? Hootie Jube. Thanks. Shout out to him. Avid fan of the show and big supporter. How's Holker looking, and how is Clint Kubiak visualizing on using him? Saw a post about how they look at them. You wrote about this. I just talked about this earlier in the show, that they look at him as the 8th round pick. So first, elaborate on what Clancy Barone told you today, and then let's talk about Dallin Holker and his upside.
Yeah. So when I spoke to Coach Barone today, one of the big things that came up was that he mentioned that they look at him and they have, and in so much as have said to Dallin Holker, like that they view him as their 8th round pick. He was a guy that by all intents and purposes was expected to be drafted. I asked for more information on that. And Clancy Barone also mentioned that of all the different coaches at different teams that he talked to, that they all expected him to be a draftable player, but the draft doesn't always work that way. Sometimes draftable players don't get drafted because one team trades up, and then 31 other teams now have to adjust their boards. And then a run happens at this position or that position, or there's a surprise at a stick and pick. Hello, Atlanta. And then that changes the way that the rest of the draft board falls and things like that. And so every little thing just has this big ripple effect that could lead to it. Now, I think, you look at him as a 6'3", 240-pound tight end. That could be a thing. You look at the fact that he wasn't asked to block much at Colorado State, which today we saw him block pretty well in a couple of occasions and everything. But so maybe those things did play a factor too. But I think a big piece that we're looking at when it comes to him is that sometimes it's just the flow of the draft. And unfortunately, when you play what's called a non-premier position, like tight end, like running back, like linebacker, like safety, you're the ones that get impacted the most by those types of shifts, ebbs, flows of what the NFL draft is. And some teams have very specific kind of builds in terms of what they like. And so they look at him as a player that should have been drafted, that they were fortunate enough to get. A big reason that they ended up getting him was because there were 3 Colorado State alums on the Saints coaching staff between Clint Kubiak. Yes, Clint Kubiak, John Benton, as well as Rick Dennison, who's a senior offensive assistant and is like, a guy that's very well respected around the NFL, as are Kubiak and Benton, don't get me wrong, but Dennison's been at it for a while. And so that ended up playing a big role into getting him to New Orleans as well. So they're really excited about him. And one of the things that Clancy Brown said was that by the time that they get through training camp, they expect to see something really, really special when it comes to Dallin Holker and the way that he can be utilized. So that sounds to me like a guy that has the expectation of at least having the upside of making a roster as well. So it feels like a pretty good vote of confidence.
Yeah. And when we did our undrafted rookie preview, one of the things that I remember stood out is you said he's 1 of 1. And his skill set.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, it shows, I think there's a lot of things he can do. And one of the things I was searching for as you were talking in the half sequence, Jake Haener, that big old hookup to Dallin Holker.
Yeah. Where he was like
got
all by
wide
himself.
open by himself for a pretty big gain. And so it's just like somehow he's able to slip through the defense. And again, we're not saying George Kittle, Travis Kelce, like get that stuff out of your mind because we're just trying to get a successful offense at this point. So those players will emerge when they need to, but I like what I've seen about Holker. been running with the first team. Obviously, no Juwan today, which was a little bit interesting. And speaking of the guys that weren't there, Dennis Allen said they were in the building. The only exception is Ryan Ramczyk, which we'll touch on here soon. But Michael Jacobson left practice early. They didn't have Tommy Hudson. I mean, it was practically Holker, Foster Moreau, and Taysom Hill out there tight end today.
It.
So it's good for him.
I have heard
he gets those reps.
Yeah, I have heard that Juwan Johnson's not a big concern, by the way, in case anybody's curious about that.
There you go. Ross Jackson.
Everything. So we'll see. But that's what I've heard. Yeah, no, I mean, it was great. And I think, John, if you might double check me, but I think the play right before he was wide open also went to him in a catch that he made in traffic with both JT Gray and Pete Werner in his area. As well. So we're watching him get open. And if I wrote the number down correctly here, nailed it. If I wrote the number correctly down here, he also is making like these tough catches in traffic and things like that. I think that like when it comes to the visualization of how he's utilized, I think the thing that makes him special is that you can move him around and it really gives you an opportunity. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like the George Kittle type of comparison and stuff like that as well, because I think that there are things that you can do with the Dallin Holker that you wouldn't necessarily do with a George Kittle just based on size and things like that. It's not that he's better than George Kittle or anything like that. We're not trying to say that. It's just like the play styles are different. And so the ability to move him around, use him in the slot, line him up out wide, probably run him out of the backfield if you really wanted to, and, kind of use him in line as well. Like there's just a lot of ways to move him around. And I think that's something that could be of value for this team. And maybe we don't see that in 2024. Maybe that's something we see more of in 2025, 2026 for him, which would be really good news for New Orleans, considering we don't know how much longer Taysom Hill has left in the tank, on the deal, on all that other stuff. So you might want that guy that can move around your offense a bit, and he could be one of those dudes to help out there. I think it's going to take a few players to make up for Taysom Hill when he decides to hang him up, and maybe Dallin Holker, if he's the guy that's next in line, can kind of help you there.
Yeah, Riz said he's like your backup everything today, which I thought was just kind of hilarious. Like no matter what, even has some kicking experience. I think you just pointed out, so it was a little bit interesting. But
it was like a high school kicker or something like that, or kicked in high school.
I mean, you just find out these funny things, just like Bink running back. Everybody knows now, Bink running back. Maybe not so much these days, but he could goal line. We want that touchdown at one point.
Oh yeah.
Man, getting to some of these other questions again. We see him. We want to make sure we get to some. Jermaine Jackson, again, short answer. Has he been returning kicks? Yes, he's been fielding punts and he's been returning kicks. The Saints hadn't really worked too much on kickoffs other than that one OTA session. It wasn't last week; it was the week before, maybe.
I think that's right. Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong.
Like the Hatfield stuff.
Yeah, but he's been involved. It's usually him, Rashid Shaheed, and Mason Tipton right now at this point. And sometimes there's Olave in that mix because, you're looking at a safe return, something like that. That's usually Olave that you put in there. But, again, I think once you start working on kickoffs, that's where you're really going to see Jermaine Jackson. And once you get contact, I mean, pads and stuff, I think that's where you're really going to see him shine a little bit. And, man,
Rumor has it we might be getting some 11-on-11 kick returns this week, so I'm excited for that.
Can't wait, as Bart Scott would say. Can't wait. Another question here. Tyler asks, and a good question. At this point in the season, which we've got less than 3 months till actual kickoff, where would you rank the Saints in NFC South? I know you've gleaned some info from other sources.
I think it depends on who the sources are.
Yeah, you're right. Sources or sauces, whichever one you want. I'll just say that I like the hype around some of the Saints, but I still think Tampa's the team to beat right now until I'm proven otherwise. And I still can't go above 9 wins for this team. And so I think the ceiling is high if everything comes together, if the offensive line does their thing, if the defensive line can get the pressure. Those two areas, I think, are the main concerns. And I think we were even talking today that, we're talking about Derek Carr and all the other stuff. And, he makes it a full 18 weeks because of the way this offense is catered to him. But if he's taking shots and hits like he was last year, that kind of dwindles a little bit. And then, you're in the same boat as last year. But again, I think cautiously optimistic is what I'd say for this team. I know the potential. The potential I felt like has been there for years, right? But in order for it to take to the next level, we need the offense to get unlocked and in the offensive line and the defensive line to come together. And if they don't have those, then it could be struggle bus again. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say second place in the NFC South as of right now, right? Trying to project it moving forward because we haven't seen the system up against, we haven't seen the new offensive system up against an actual NFL defense, at full speed in game settings and all those other things. Like it would just be hopeful to put them above that as of right now. And I'm not willing to do that. I think like if you look at the roster, and I made this argument over in Locked On Saints a while ago too. If you look at this roster, I think that there are moments where the roster there are areas where the roster has gotten better. There's positions where they've gotten better. But I don't know if the roster as a whole, as a cumulative, has improved. And I don't think that that's without design. I think that what the Saints have shown is actually they're okay with the roster. It's the coaching staff that they wanted to revamp. And I thought they did an excellent job revamping the coaching staff in such a way that it gives them the best opportunity to improve in 2024. But until we see them improve in 2024, it's hard to say, okay, they're going to win more than 9 games. Sports Info Solutions, who I have a lot of respect for, they do a lot of really, really good research and work and stuff like that. Yep. They put them at 10.5 wins, which was like on the high side. I mean, I think most sports books and stuff like that hover them in the we don't know what to do with this team area, i.e. 8.5, 7.5 wins. Yeah. That's typically like we have no idea. Like Vegas doesn't know kind of area. And so, I give a nod to Sports Info Solutions to say like, hey, if you're looking at this in an algorithmic way that is like really taking a look at different statistics and different analytics and all these other things, then like, okay, well, it looks like the Saints actually line up pretty well this season, and they have tough opponents, but somehow one of the easiest schedules. It just goes to show you that having an easy schedule doesn't mean anything in the NFL because they have very tough opponents all season. And so that's the way that I would put. So I think 9 and 8 is still where I'd put them. Second place in the NFC South is still where I would project them as of right now. But they win one game that I don't expect them to win, and all of a sudden they're 10 and 7 and probably tied for first in the NFC South. Like it's not that good a division.
Yeah, and that's what we've discussed this plenty, that it's going to take them beating a good team to get to that 10th win that they're trying to get to. I have no doubts that they can go 4-2 in the division, or maybe 3-3. But can you beat some of the good teams? And there's some good ones out there. It's going to be tested early. When we did when I did my game by game predictions, I predicted them to fall into a hole pretty early because Dallas and Philly. I can't say right now that this team can go in there and on the road and beat Dallas in Arlington. I don't know that they can beat Philly because I just don't know how they're going to stack up against Jalen Hurts. Yeah, I understand the last game they played, that was a little bit different, but I just don't know. And those could go either way. But if they can get over those hurdles and beat teams like that, or not flop like they did last year in Green Bay, or, beat a team like the Chargers or somebody like that, I feel pretty good about where they could go. But at this moment, don't eat the cheese just yet.
Yeah.
But there's reason to maybe be a little bit more optimistic than what maybe Vegas has to say on it. And 7.5, I think, is too low based off of what we've seen so far. But again, I'm not going to tell you eat the cheese. We want to see more, right? That's the biggest thing. Another thing on here, I believe the Saints still need, from Keeping It Real, Who Dat Sports Podcast. Thank you for tuning into us for sure. And those guys do great work too. All the guys,
go check them out.
So many Saints pods that do.
Hoodie was in here.
Please
Jonah
diversify.
Was in here.
Yeah, please diversify your reach on Saints pods. You don't need to just do one. There are so many good people out there that do great things. So check them out, please. But he asks about the tight end room and the interior defensive line. Anything that you would see them add to? I think I could get behind tight end possibly, but the what's out there is not really that good. And interior,
that's the thing.
I think. Well, we got to figure out where Brian Brees at too. Being that he hasn't been participating in teams. So I think if I'm putting 2 and 2 together, maybe he's coming off something off season. I can find out though and get back to everybody. But a guy like Kendall Vickers, I think we probably sleep on him a little bit. But they didn't have Jack Heflin in there. They can get some guys from the UFL. I don't know if it's as super simple as saying, well, let's just go to free agent and find the best player available. But tight end room, it's slim pickings. If you look at it, I don't think there's too much out there. You'd be like, man. And then Jimmy Graham, he's rowing, man. I don't think he's playing football this year, but never say never.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. He's a little busy. Yeah, I mean, like I'm looking at this like list of free agent tight ends, and there's just nobody that really like jumps out. Like anybody that you would go out there and get, I don't know that any of them are beating anybody that's on the roster. So I don't know. So that's my big thing is like, yeah, can you add to the room and could it be helpful? Sure. But there's just not the options out there to get that done. So that's the way that I would look at it. I think instead of doing that, focus on who you have in the room now and try to maximize what you got.
Yeah, I think they could develop them. And then Benjamin asks about, besides Saunders and Brzee, who's your early pick for DT? I mean, for me, it's Nathan Shepard, right? I think Nathan
Yeah.
Shepard, and we've been talking about Christian Boyd. Christian Boyd, I think, is somebody that obviously can be very disruptive. And my guy that I picked before everything started, Kyler Ball, I think that he's somebody that may not make the roster potentially at this point because you're super early on. I don't think he's going to edge out any of those other guys, but he could distance himself. He could make the practice squad or somebody like that. But I feel like, DT's pretty straightforward at this point. I don't see there's too much disparity on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, I still look at Nathan Shepard as the other guy. And then I think Christian Boyd could have, yes. Yeah. It was good to see him. And then Christian Boyd, as a additional run stopper that kind of fills that Malcolm Brown role that the Saints have been trying to fix ever since they traded him away to Jacksonville years ago. Or like Tyler Davison, almost like that kind of like nose tackle guy that can plug up the middle and be a run stuffer or run stopper for you. I think that's what I look at as the fourth guy as of right now.
Yeah. Right. Man, I don't know if I want to put this comment up here. Hoodie Jupe's got jokes, man. He's talking about your shine, bro. What's going on there?
Listen, Diamond. All right. You can't stop the shine. I'm sorry. It can't be done. It can't be done. Like this faux head's gonna glisten. All right.
Yeah. You got to. I mean, hey, make it work. Make it happen, Kevin.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Jerry says his birthday's Friday. Happy early birthday, Jerry. Very avid supporter of our show. So really appreciate it. Shout out to him for sure. Let's see. We go through some of these other questions because we just got so many different ones out here, man. With Kamara being available and no suspension and a healthy Jamal Williams, do y'all see Kendre Miller getting any touches this year? Hope so, because when he showed flashes, I mean, we've talked on this and touched on this a good bit, that I think at the end of the day, I think we took Kamara more rushing yards, Miller more receiving yards, possibly is how we might shape up. But we've talked about Jamal Williams. I don't know if I say beat a dead horse or go back to that necessarily, because those are on some past episodes. But again, I think that three-headed monster as of right now looks pretty good. But look, I take it this way. What I've seen from guys like Jordan Mims or Jacob Gabodi, or a James Robinson, I think there's reason to be a little bit more optimistic. I think Jordan Mims and we've talked about him on this show too. It's going to be fascinating to see a guy like him in the preseason, right? I just feel like he's learning, he's adapting, he's got the right mindset. He showed up at rookie minicamp, even though he didn't have to, because he wanted to show the coaches what he could do. And he's getting some first team reps. He's getting red zone reps. He's getting special teams. He's doing the things that he needs to do to try to make this roster. And I think there's an appreciation for that. But, when it's all said and done, Kamara being here for a full 17 games, Jamal Williams being here for a full 17 games, and Kendre Miller a full 17 games. How do you split that up? How does that look on a game day?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to game plan, right? Does the defense that you're going up against have a weak interior? Does the defense that you're going up with have solid linebackers, but not necessarily ones that get sideline to sideline? Like you look at the Denver Broncos, they don't have those linebackers. So if you don't have the guys that can get to the perimeter, then the outside zone run becomes really, really potent for you. Coverage or challenging those linebackers in coverage becomes really, really potent for you. So then that becomes a really nice game for Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller. But then if you're going up against a team that has a weaker interior or that is like low when it comes to, ranking in run defense and all those other things, then maybe that becomes Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams. So I think it's going to completely depend upon game plan. And look, all three of those guys are not going to play 17 games either. Like, that's the other thing, is like those guys are going to miss games. Like, that's a tough position to play all 17 games on. And so I think that like that's going to have a big impact and a big focus as well. That's where I think guys like Jordan Mims and these other guys become really important, because when you go, like, let's say you're without, Alvin Kamara for a game. Okay, well, Kendre Miller steps up to be your kind of lead guy that could do a little bit of everything. And then you bring up a Jordan Mims to be the extra scat back guy and everything, kind of fill in the role that Kendre Miller would otherwise fill behind Alvin Kamara. And I think that like that's really the way to look at it. I don't think that it's going to be, week 1 through 18 minus the bye week. This is how the running backs are used. It's going to change every single week.
Yeah, and we've dictated or said this too, that the game plan is going to dictate who gets a lot of that work.
Yep.
Like, it could be a Jamal Williams game one week where they need to run more in the trenches. Maybe they see something to field where they need to be faster and quicker outside. It could be a Kendre game. It could be a Kamara game. I feel like, and not feel, I know this is a situation where Clint Kubiak is going to try to put his best guys on the field and put best forward. He's not a guy that would second guess himself. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm taking shots. I just feel like he's more confident as opposed to what was before and sure-handed. I mean, everybody's going to remember Pete didn't want the job at first, right? In some aspects. Right. And so I just feel like he's got a lot to prove. And, for this offense to work, it could work.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that confidence that you mentioned too is being seen already, in that this team already feels like it has an identity on the offensive side.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, everything that they do constantly. They use motion, they use play action, rollouts, all those other
attack
things.
The middle of the field.
Attack in the middle. Exactly. Like, all the things that are like DNA to what an identity is, this team is doing every single practice. We're not seeing any venture away from it. This is what they want to do. And so I think that that breeds confidence, right? With comfort, with assurance comes confidence, right? Because you know what you're falling back on.
Yeah, and I don't remember what week, maybe it was like 12 or 13 when Kamara said we don't have an identity, and then he said we have an identity. I think he was talking more as the offense. I don't think they did have an identity, and it showed, like, just kind of throwing it up and hoping that it sticks, I guess, in a way. But I feel better about the direction based off of what we've seen, who we've talked to, and all the other stuff. And like I pointed out last week, you got defensive players that are super excited about this too, because they're seeing this offense, from a defensive perspective, and they get tripped up a good bit and seeing different things like shifts and more people in motion and all that other stuff. I mean, it makes a big difference, and it's only going to make you better, presumably. So we'll have to keep tabs on that. But again, I feel like the direction is going in the right way. Kind of maybe rapid fire some of these, because we talk some more. We're talking about minicamp without talking about minicamp, I guess. Kicker punter competition, nothing really today. It was Lou Hedley and Blake Grupe day. Grupe hit his first 6 kicks, and then the last 2 did not look good at all. No, and like I wrote about, Matt Hayball was the holder on it. Not that I'm throwing him under the bus or anything, but it was a 57-yarder that went way wide right. I mean, it looked like one of those Madden kicks where you put the thing all the way to the right. Like, that's what it looked like. And the second one from a few yards up was wide right, just a little bit more. But Charlie Smith struggled a little bit last week in OTAs. I'm not too worried about some of that stuff. We even touched on it. Go back to last week, and you can hear a little bit about our thoughts there. But for Grupe, I think he's fine. Lou Hedley, again, some of the punts were really good, some maybe not so good. But do you think he definitely didn't have as strong of a showing as he did that one time in OTAs when we looked at him, but still pretty good. Yeah, it's just too much information to process right now. It's information gathering, I would say, and I don't think you'd say, well, somebody has a leg up, necessary, pun intended, on the competition, because at this point, it's got to be the incumbents. It's got to be who you had last year for me.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, there's nothing, like, unless somebody were to absolutely fall apart, nothing's going to be decided until like right now.
Yeah, let's hope nobody falls apart.
Right.
Lego guy or something, Lego man minifigure. Roe asked about the Khaleke Hudson, been on the field much. I mean, yeah, he has been on the field. He's definitely somebody that has been playing some special teams and getting in that rotation and stuff. He tweeted a little something today, but he still was able to be out there and stuff. I mean, those types of things are going to happen. But again, I like him. I mean, you got to look at, and there was a question earlier. I don't know if I could find it. Yeah, after Demario, who's the next man, but kind of coincide. Man, Khaleke Hudson's a guy that, I mean, down the stretch, Washington finally said, "Hey, this guy can play. Let's put him in." And all the tackles and how well he played. I mean, we kind of ran down it that, Demario, Pete Werner, Willie Gay Jr., Khaleke Hudson. Those are 4 linebackers. I feel really good about it. And we see DeMarco Jackson taking more leap.
Yeah,
we
put
see
DeMarco in there
Anthony
too.
Orge taking more leap. And, we got undrafted guys like Isaiah Stallberg that we talk about. Nephi Sewell, he's on the right track. We saw him, I saw him in the locker room today. He's doing well. I don't want to tell you he's getting close or anything like that because he's coming off the ACL injury, but I think this linebacker room with Michael Hodges at the helm, it does look real promising in my opinion. So, but Hudson's a guy that I think you're going to hear more of as we go along. And man, he's a baller. I'll tell you what, man, he just didn't get the opportunities in Washington until it was too late. And by that time, Saints were on him. So good on them for sure.
Absolutely.
Jaylan Ford, we got to talk a little bit today, and so we forgot about him a little bit. But man, Jaylan Ford, man, he's a sponge. He's coming in here and trying to learn things. Love his attitude, man. He's just somebody that I think can come in here and do some things. But getting more involved because he was in this ramp up period. You know what I mean? And he's working off to the side, getting a little bit more involved, and so hasn't participated in like team stuff really yet. But it's coming. But your thoughts on Jaylan Ford?
Yeah, I think he's in the midst of sort of an acclimation period after, off-season stuff and all that. I think training camp is the target for him in terms of getting him out in team, like mostly involved in team drills and stuff like that. As I've understood so far, and everything. But I'm excited to see him. I mean, the thing that I like about him a lot is that like his ability to read, react, his ability to process. He's a great communicator. All those other things, like. I think the thing that's so interesting is that like a lot of times people will say, well, who's the 4th linebacker behind Demario Davis, Pete Werner, Willie Gay? And it's like, well, it's not really about who's the 4th. It's who's the 2nd behind each of those guys, because all 3 of those guys play a different position. And I look at Jaylan Ford as a potential Mike, right? A guy that would be behind Demario in this situation. So I put him behind Demario. I put DeMarco Jackson behind Willie Gay on the strong side. And then I would put Khaleke Hudson right now behind Pete Werner on the weak side. And that's where I would look at it. And so I think that that's where you're hoping to see Jaylan Ford really take his next steps, is getting involved, first of all, in camp. Seems to be the expected timeline, but also be the guy that can help to kind of communicate a bit. Yeah,
for sure. Another thing, if the Saints finish 9-8, miss the playoffs, you think we see it into the Dennis Allen era? I mean, we've kind of touched on it. I don't think so. I don't. We can go back. I just don't. I know people want to say that, and this pressure should be on. Like if you come out slow and all this other, all of that should be there. But I mean, I'm not saying there's excuses there or anything like that. But this team is going to be expected to do a lot of things now. Whether they get there, it's going to fall on coaching, and a lot of that has to do with Dennis Allen. And again, it's they can't miss the playoffs this year. They can't, and I just don't see how you justify it necessarily. But if they come close again and turn in a 9-8 record, I just don't think they get the boot and do a soft reset or reboot or anything like that, because I think this offense is here to stay. And that's all I'll say about that. Any thoughts you want to add on to it?
Yeah, I think at any point where you bring in a new offensive coordinator, it probably buys you an extra year, right? Like, oh, well, we're learning, we're trying to get the new offense, all these other things. Like, there's always a part of that. And then what's the context behind going 9-8 and missing the playoffs, right? Like if you go 9-8 and you play and you won 6 of those games without your starting quarterback, then no, you know what I mean? Like it's a very, very, like that's a good season. That's a surprising season that should have ended much worse than it was. And so I think that like there's a lot of context and all of that we can't just like look at in a vacuum and say, oh yeah, well, if this happens, then this happens, and this happens. It's never just those 2 or 3 things on all that. And then, what's the condition of, losing losing one of those games? What if the difference between 10-7 and 9-8 was a fluke in the new kickoff rule? Whose fault is that? You know what I mean? So like, there's just a lot of those, right? Right. Like there's just a lot of those things that just, there's nuance, context, like all those things are good.
Yeah, for sure. Another question Michael asked about the Drew Brees induction in the Saints Hall of Fame, when
I
that
know what
might
it
be. I know
should
it's,
be.
yeah, it should be, against the Broncos. But last I heard about it, they got to wait on the NFL. So it's more like the NFL that has to deal with that, not necessarily a Saints thing. And so last year, what was it, week 12? Or it was like November-ish, I think. So hopefully not. But, I think that Thursday night game would be a perfect idea for it. But, you got to think too, when they do the induction for Drew in on the field, it can't be no like 5-minute thing. Like they need to give him some time. So I don't know. Maybe they got.
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I wonder if the Thursday night game is actually a good idea, because like the TV breaks are going to be longer, halftime's going to be longer, like all that stuff's going to be longer. But the thing about it is that like the reason why all those things are longer are because you have programming that's running. And so can you really do the Thursday Night Football halftime show on Prime while Drew Brees is getting, having an induction ceremony over the course of halftime and stuff like that? Like it could be a little bit challenging. But the time that they did the dedication to him and everything, was that Bills game, not a great game, but was that Bills game that was a primetime game, which was the same thing, to where it's like a lot longer TV breaks and stuff like that. So, and I think doing it while Sean Payton's around would be that's just a classy move.
Work.
Too. But again, like you said, it's not the Saints making that decision. Like the NFL has to make a big part of that decision. And even still, it's the Saints Hall of Fame and the NFL, which is a different entity than the New Orleans Saints themselves. So
correct. Yep, absolutely. So we're gonna find out hopefully sooner rather than later, to quote Sean Payton, for sure. We were talking about the running back stuff earlier, but Taysom at fullback and running back, again, he was playing lead block on some stuff, and maybe he takes some touches away from the running backs. I mean, maybe.
But he already was.
No, but he already gets touches. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I don't think so.
Well, maybe the question is how would that look? Because most of the times he takes it off in those QB powers. But is it going to be more of a situation where, again, he's in the backfield and he's taking those handoffs as opposed to just running the QB power? I mean, I don't know. Is that like same touches just looks different, or
just dispersed a different way? Yeah. I'm curious. I think like it would make sense to just kind of disseminate them in a different way, to where like he's not just getting those carries in the QB power situation, he's also getting them as a running back and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe see an uptick in carries, but I think that this offense is going to see an uptick in runs as a whole, like entirely. Like they're going to want to be a part of that. So I think that there's a balance in between the increased rushing opportunities that we all expect in rushing attempts that we all expect in 2024, and then the balance of how much does Taysom Hill get out of all that, and how different is it percentage wise from what he's gotten in the past. I don't know that he takes away a ton of opportunities from the other guys, because the opportunities as a whole are set to grow.
Yeah, for sure.
Great question.
It's a great question. I mean, it remains to be seen, but I still think that it's going to be similar. But I think the biggest thing too for me is using him early, often, and at the right times, because that didn't happen last year. It wasn't consistent. It's like you put Taysom in, good things happen. Well, yeah. So why don't you do it earlier? Well, I got to do a better job, is what to say. Okay, so do it. You know what I mean? Like this is the thing. You have to do it. Oh man. I just hope that it comes together this year. I've said it too many times. I'm so tired of sitting through this vanilla offense that's just been so hard to just sit through. Too. I mean,
yeah, man.
Let's see.
We're up there calling the plays.
Right. Exactly. Come on, man. This is what it should be. Well, 53 minutes in the show. I guess let's run down attendance for OTAs.
Yes.
OTAs, minicamp, sure. OTAs. That's last week, John. Shut up. So those guys that weren't there, we touched on a few of them, but Stanley Morgan Jr., he's clearly dealing with something, right? I mean, we know that. And Faion Hicks, who you said you got a little bit of insight on him, why he wasn't out there today.
Minor.
It's minor, right? Nephi Sewell, we already know, ACL. We're going to talk about Ryan Ramczyk in a second. Juwan Johnson wasn't out there. Tommy Hudson wasn't out there. Tano, we know, is dealing with Achilles. And then Brian Brees was another one. We're going to have to just see how that works. Jack Heflin wasn't out there, so they were missing a good bit of that interior defensive line. And then Chase Young, who was in the locker room. So, again, these people are around the locker, players, and he spoke with media and stuff. No big surprises. But, again, let's talk about Ryan Ramczyk for a second. We've been kind of saying this. I mean, we've been telling you guys it doesn't sound optimistic. It's been
Yeah.
like that for a while, right? And it sounded like it could have been trending in the right direction, then it wasn't, and then now it just didn't sound like. At this point, we'd all be surprised if he actually gets on the field at some point in 2024, right? But
Yep.
did it sound saying that he's excused? He's doing rehab at home. Just kind of this. Well, it's neither direction of where it's trending right now, whether he's going better or worse or anything like that.
Yeah,
But
not great news.
reading between the lines, man, he's. I just don't see him on this team. And look, for his sake, I don't know if he plays football again. We've kind of said that too, but at least getting a little bit more information without getting information on Ryan Ramczyk. Again, I think this team is pulling forward, pushing forward. Right now, Trevor Penning's still right tackle. Tolise Fuonga is at left tackle, and I think they're okay with that right now. So until they're not, right? But Ramczyk, that's unfortunate. I mean, do you think at this point, man, he's just going to hang it up, right? That might be the thing to do.
Yeah, maybe. I think the thing that I'm most sure of is that we're probably not going to see him in 2024. What he decides to do for himself and his life and his family and his health and everything like that, like that's so much a bigger decision and everything that he doesn't have to make this season if he doesn't want to. He can wait until next year. He can not play this season and then make a decision at a later point and stuff like that. And so I think for me, the thing that's most immediate is that it very much feels like he's not playing in 2024. Or at least I would be shocked if he did. And so like that's where I would look at it right now. And I think the offensive line that we're looking at, the one that you just described with Taliesin Fuang on the left side, Trevor Penning on the right side, Nick Saldiverian at left guard, I think that's going to be the week one. That's going to be the week one offensive line more than likely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think here's the other thing you got to remember about, someone when it comes to Ramczyk. You see so many offensive linemen once they retire from football lose so much weight. Like Max Unger is one of the guys that come to mind. I remember Nate Newton, the Cowboys throwback. He was the one that lost this tremendous amount of weight. I mean, Ramczyk's kind of in that boat. Like you're supposed to eat this rigorous diet to keep the weight up and all this other stuff. And once you do that, I just don't even know if he's in a playing weight capacity at this point. You know what I mean? And so,
yeah, there were some rumors about him having lost weight and all that other stuff already.
Yeah.
As it is.
Exactly. So, but unfortunate, but nothing too big and too surprising. I think we kind of said Michael Jacobson, he left early. Maybe we said that or not. And then they also had one of their tryout players, which we didn't even talk about that, but tryout players today, Jordan Smith, linebacker from UAB, he left practice early. They also have Roderick Teamer in there, Cameron Wire from Tulane, Cameron Peterson from Southern, and then Russell Gage, which kind of a little bit interesting to see Russell Gage out there, especially given no Stanley Morgan Jr. But we saw Nathan Latu come back. That was a good thing. But let's talk about tryout players of that bunch. Any expectations? Like, this is the point last year, Lynn Bowden and Kiki Kute came in. Lynn Bowden made the squad based off of what he did. And so Russell Gage is interesting.
Yeah, I think Russell Gage and Cameron Peterson are the two that are most interesting to me. And I think Roderick Teamer can be as well, especially just think about like special teams and all the other contributions that he could potentially make, or the variety of contributions that he could make. But Cameron Peterson's interesting because they also brought him in. He was here at rookie minicamp, and then they brought him back again here for a minicamp tryout. And so I think that like just anytime that you kind of get that opportunity to like get two looks at a player, that typically means you like what you're seeing. And so it'll be interesting to see. We covered him at the HBCU Combine a couple of years ago, and he was just a demolition man. He was an absolute wrecking ball. Then he went to Baltimore, found out he had kind of this like lingering shoulder issue, maybe like an internal something or another that effectively halted his progress at that point. And then so now he's, rehabbed from that. He's feeling good. Talked to him a little bit after practice and excited to get another opportunity. And he's just one of those dudes that like, he'd be such a good culture fit. Like he just makes so much sense. With that in mind, it's just about seeing him out on the field at this point. And so we'll see as it goes through, but I do think that it means something that he came back twice, or that he was brought in twice. And then just on the Russell Gage idea, like, I'm with you 100% on that. Like without having seen Stanley Morgan Jr. yet, knowing how Russell Gage can contribute on a special teams area and contribute as somebody that can make plays for you as a receiver. I mean, we saw that in Tampa Bay for years, and even he's just going to make the rounds in the NFC South, it sounds like. now that I think about it. But yeah, I think like those two are the ones that are most intriguing so far to me.
Yeah, no, I
No
agree.
disrespect for the other guys. Those are just the ones.
No, of course not. But I mean, and sometimes it's kind of establishing that foundation so they can be on a short list when training camp comes along too, because you're going to have people get hurt in training camp. You're going to have those things that happen. And so, I mean, I remember, what was it last year? We didn't see Traquan Smith for like 11 days or something.
Right.
And nobody would ever could find out what was going on. And he was injured. We knew it was injury related. We just, all those stuff happens. And then you're just kind of going about your business and stuff. But again, tryout players, they got 2 more days. And then, we're going to get a break here and see how things go. And then we got Kool-Aid McKinstry working off the side, no helmet. But man, he's got some really good lateral movement on him. And I'm just so excited to see him, especially DA's comments about he's going to play slot and outside. Of course, Alante is going to be a slot guy as of right now. But, McKinstry, more of an outside guy, but they've got guys that they've been using, the Rejon Wrights and the Shamar Jean Charles that are, I don't want to say put them in the same category as Isaac Yiadom, but they have that potential in some aspects. And I know these are guys like who, most people say, but that was the same thing you guys said about Isaac Yiadom last year. And look what he was able to do. And so you got the right teachers back there, but sky's the limit for some of these guys. But I'm excited to see Kool-Aid in action when we get to training camp for sure.
Yeah. Marcus Robertson talked quite a bit with me last week too about Kool-Aid moving to the slot and like how not him moving to the slot, sorry, but like how he could contribute from the slot. Because my question was, he played like 28 slot snaps at Alabama. So how do you look at a player and then say, okay, that player who has played the majority of their career on the outside has the talent to play on the inside? Like, what are the things that you look for to be able to identify that? And one of the big things that he talked about was him as a run supporter, him as a tackler, him as a willing angle, like taking the right angles, doing all those things. I think, and the short area quickness, all those pieces, I think those are the things that they highlight that you have to be able to do in the slot. And so Kool-Aid McKinstry definitely has all that. So it would be interesting to watch him compete, because he's going to compete. Dennis Allen talked about him competing in the slot and on the outside. I imagine that's with Paulson and Debo, but it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how all that goes.
Yeah, for sure. Going to another question. How did Miller Bradford? This is kind of quick answer, but I do want to jump off from here. So how does he look after getting INTs? Really quiet day, not much, but I will say, because we really haven't talked about Jake Haener, we hadn't talked about Spencer Rattler, but I will say Spencer Rattler looked pretty comfortable out there. Not
much
before
better.
You guys blow up and say something. Jake Haener looked excellent. He looked sharp, about as sharp as I've ever seen Jake Haener. So but what I said about Rattler is he looks like he's improving. His footwork looks good. His tempo looks good. His progressions, you see him going through those reads, making smarter decisions, making sure that he's not just holding on to the football. Like, I think you see the maturity. And I think that's a big thing, that we're seeing the growth week over week over week. And he's starting to put it together more. And he's an exceptionally smart player, right? And so I don't think I'm surprised by that. But the way Jake Haener has been playing, which again today played pretty lights out. He had some of the best throws today. He was throwing some darts and some dimes out there, and it was in sevens. It was in teams. Derek Carr had some good throws. I mean, that play to Olave was when he burned Marshon was insane. And Haener's throw to Rashid Shaheed on the sideline. I mean, it's a good problem to have when you have, potentially 3 really good quarterbacks. And I don't want to dismiss Nathan Peterman, but he was perfect on his throws today, all 3 of them. But
all 3 of
your thoughts on Haener, your thoughts on Rattler, and just kind of where things are at right now.
Yeah, just to give the numbers, Rattler was 7 of 9 on the day. Haener was 11 of 14 on the day with a touchdown. That was the touchdown in teams to Rashid Shaheed. Derek Carr was 11 of 6 with a touchdown. Yeah. I'm going to come back to that one too. Carr 11 of 16 with a touchdown, and then, as you mentioned, Peterman was 3 of 3. They were working a lot of situational stuff today, so you saw them working like everything down to get a quick completion, how to get out of bounds, right? Get out of bounds moving forward, not get out of bounds moving backwards. Completing a pass over the middle in a running clock situation with no timeouts, get down, get the ball to the referee, spike the ball. Like, they were doing a lot of this kind of stuff. And one of the things that they ended up doing at the end was an end of first half drill, to where they all started with the ball 58 seconds on the clock. and tried to drive down just to get in the field goal range, try to kick a field goal. And Haener led a successful drive that got to a 40-yard field goal attempt. And Rattler led what I would call a successful drive that just had a missed field goal, but got them into field goal range. And then I believe it was Rattler at one point that had a gorgeous throw over the middle of the field and kind of had to fit it into a tight window to Kyle Sheets on a crosser in the intermediate area. So like you're seeing a lot of good things from both of these guys. And it's funny because like you're going to get your loyalists and everything, people that are loyal about this quarterback. Like this is quarterback conversation. Like quarterback discourse is like inherently toxic. And so there's always going to be like loyalism and all those other things that are in there. But like this is a good situation for New Orleans that they have like these other two young guys that are looking sharp and that are looking good and that are looking comfortable in a brand new system. And so I'm sure the Saints are very pleased with their investments at quarterback, especially coming from a team that in the past was not making investments for when it came to young quarterbacks. So it's good to see it. Yeah,
I was checking notes on it. That throw to Sheets that you brought up, he threw a rope. I mean, it was a rope. A beautiful, beautiful pass. And I'm sorry, I was smirking earlier because you made the comment about giving the ball to the referee, and I couldn't help but think about Dallas and how they forgot to do that and how they lost against San Francisco. It's like, how do you not know the rules? Like, this is why they play and do this stuff now. So when those situations come up, you know what to do.
Right. Like, yeah. I mean, why is San Francisco always involved somehow or another? It's insane.
I don't know, but hey, it speaks for themselves. They got all those Super Bowl appearances and championship appearances, so they're doing something right. And look, I think with the quarterbacks, just going back to them, look, right now in OTAs or in minicamp, like that performance is good. But let's see it more. Let's see how it does in training camp. Let's see how it does in preseason. I think the preseason is the litmus test, right? Because a guy like Jake Haener looked really good in camp and all the things, but preseason wasn't so hot for him. And so for me, I got to see it in the preseason. And I don't know how creative the Saints offense is going to be in the preseason, but we're still months away from that, but I can't wait to see if they start running the motion or do some of the basics that we've been seeing, attacking the middle of the field. You might see Carr a little, but I would expect to see a lot of Jake Haener, a lot of Spencer Rattler, and a lot of Nathan Peterman in the preseason. I don't have to see a lot, but one drive will be okay. You know what I mean? And stuff. So yeah,
I think the other thing we got to see from Jake Haener, I mean, I'm sorry. Spencer Rattler a little bit today too was the scramble multiplicious. So this was a thing that I accidentally said on my show on Locked On Saints. I was trying to say that, like, you said somebody is like duplicitous and that like they can do two different things. I was trying to say that somebody was like multiple and so I was trying to say like multiplicitous, but that's not a word. And so I just said multiplicious, like it's multiply delicious. And I thought that was good too. That got the same point across.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
I was thinking Lucky Charms, they're magically delicious. Instead when you said that. Sorry, y'all. I'm in rare form. That's what you get out of this. So, again. Man. All right. So we got other questions, but let's just go here because we got two more of these, and so we can always circle back to topics. Anything from today that stood out that maybe we didn't get to offhand?
The dime package was interesting.
Today. Oh yeah, of course. Dime defense.
The 6 DB look, because again, they were doing these sort of like end of half obvious passing situational work. And so what we saw was, of course, Paul Sadibo and Marshon Lattimore on the outside, Alontae Taylor in the slot. And then the additional 3 defensive backs were Jonathan Abram down in the box playing near the line of scrimmage. And then it was Tyrann Mathieu and Will Harris that were deep. There was one snap where we did see Jordan Howden out there, but I think Jordan's still working his way back.
Not yet.
Yeah. And so
go back to last week if you want to know. So
Yep. And so I think that that was really interesting to see like Will Harris involved in that as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good call. Just seeing that that defense again, it was situational football. So again, you look at it and you got to practice this stuff now because I mean, you think about this session of minicamp, you don't get that much time on the field. Like there's certain rules based off of the CBA and all that other stuff. You have to maximize that time. And so what you're able to work on now, I mean, it's fundamentals, it's basics and all that stuff, but it matters, because the Saints are having to play dime. They're having to do a lot of that stuff, and they get creative in some of those looks. So yeah, I agree. Tedra asked about Will Harris over Howden. It's not that. It's as I said last week, Howden is had off-season surgery, so he's ramping up. He should be in the mix more for team soon. It's just kind of that ramp up stuff. But yeah, it's nothing against Jordan Howden, but I think that's a good problem to have, that they have some really talented safeties, and we talked about that the other week.
Very versatile guys too.
Very, very versatile. And like I said, Howden, they want to use him more in the box. So that's the ultimate vision for him. So you're talking about different skill sets in some aspects too. Want to get this question real quick. If we had to choose the best lineup for the offensive line, he's going, this is Hoodie Jew. He says Fuanga, Lucas Patrick, McCoy, Ruiz, and Penning. Would you? I mean, we kind of touched on this earlier, but
yeah, I said mine.
Would you stick with the same? I mean, I don't know if I would. I guess look, I want to see more from Nick Saldiveri. He bulked up. I think Saldiveri. They going back to the Senior Bowl, if you remember, that Jeff Ireland said their vision for Saldiveri and Penning were that they were starting to compete for starting roles. That was their vision for both of those players. And Saldiveri, look, he's a very talented interior offensive lineman. I get it. Old Dominion, that's a whole story within himself. It speaks about his loyalty and such, but he's got the football IQ for sure. Like you talk to a guy like him and Landon Young's as smart as they come. Like if you ever want to know technical terms of on the offensive line, Landon Young will teach you something every time.
He needs to coach, man. Later. Not yet. Not
he's
now.
Still playing,
not now. But he's got to coach at some point, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't change out that offensive line. But, look, again, we mentioned it earlier that, there are some offensive linemen that are on that roster, that can distance themselves. I find it interesting. The only undrafted rookie really that's above right now is Kyle Hergel. He's playing right guard, with the second team. So, and again, this is a guy that was drafted, third or fourth overall in the CFL draft. So
yeah,
it might be a good reason with good reason, but I wouldn't change anything on that offensive line really right now.
Yeah. But we also haven't seen Lucas Patrick play any guard. He's only played center,
backup center. Right.
Yeah.
He can't play.
The other guy's been Shane Lemieux. He can play. Yeah, for sure. But the other guy's been Lemieux behind Saldiveri along with Hergel.
Yeah. Trizzy, big fan of the show too, does great work. Put Taysom at kick return every once in a while with the new rules.
Your take is not as hot as you think.
I don't think it's not as hot of a take as you think it is. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. Just like you're going to see Kamara out there sometimes, I'm sure. But that's not really that big surprise stuff. So
yeah, I can explain the logic behind that too. It's not just that. It's not just that like you want to get Taysom Hill involved as a kick returner, but you're going to have two returners back that's playing. Basically, one of them is playing right of center, one of them is playing left of center, and a guy like Taysom can return and block, and that is massively valuable in this situation. That's why one of the reasons why we also, I imagine, is one of the reasons why we've also seen Jamal Williams back there getting some work, because he can block like crazy and he can run. And so gives you the opportunity to have those guys back there to where you have one guy that's a pure returner and you have another guy that's an effective returner and also an additional blocker for you. And when you can get a pair of those guys out there that are really, really good at both, that's excellent. But otherwise you might see it paired to like pure returner and then returner / blocker. Cause you're not going to want to just put like a big blocker back there because they're just going to kick to that guy. Yeah. And it's not going to do what you think it does,
Right. The answer is just yes. Football player.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
I mean, that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
Oh man, for sure. Well, let's see. I'm going to go through notes real quick and see if there's anything else. Look, I think some guys getting involved more. We've talked about him before. Cedric Wilson getting a little bit more involved. Equinemius St. Brown. This is probably most active day that we've seen from him, but Cedric Wilson Jr. continues to be kind of that third wide receiver right now, kind of that slot guy. They move him around a lot. You've talked about it in previous episodes. That's not a bad thing to put this guy in a slot. And so not that it's anything against AT Pair or anything, but they have a clear vision. It's different roles, different types of role for him. And so I think that's something worth pointing out for sure. what was it? Foster had that one-hander near the sideline.
Yes, that was a nice day. And he's got bigger too, by the way. Like Foster looked bigger. Yeah, he looked bigger.
I had to ask him tomorrow, but he looks like he might have got bulked up a little bit. And so, let's see. Oh, and the one rep that Carr had, what was this? Might have been in sevens where we saw Mason Tipton kind of work. So some guys like Mason Tipton have been working a little bit with the first team. Man, he cut across formation. He was wide open. And Carr took the option in the flats, but man, guy like him got the speedy burners. And I knew if he goes back on film and pointed this out that he's going to be like, man, I had Tipton for wide open touchdown and stuff. Yep. But, it's worth pointing out. And again, we talk about some of these guys and some of them we write about. Not everybody we're going to talk about here because, you don't have all the time in the day, although we wish we kind of did sometimes. But yeah, for sure. Let's see. Anything else that stood out for you? I'm just going back through some of these other notes.
Yeah, no, I think I hit all my stuff.
Jacob Kabodi, he had a pretty nice run today. That toss play.
Yeah, we also had a pitch.
Toss play. Justin Herron.
We also had a nice pitch to nice pitch run on the outside left to James Robinson. Got loose, or maybe that was on the outside right. Actually, got loose, and that was a good Dallin Holker block over on that side that ended up springing him loose. So another big one there too.
Yep, good block off the edge for sure. Yeah, I think that's a good bit of everything. I mean, the final minute drills again. We can look at some of the stuff. I think Haener looked really good there. That was the main thing. They put points up on the board. Carr didn't in that situation. And, Rattler had them in that position, but wasn't able to knock through some points. But, I think efficiency overall of the day was there. And, they're only going to do 2 more of these. So it's going to give us even more information as well. So, Let's see any parting thoughts on these questions. Who look at it? Tedra, we talked about tight ends earlier. They were down a bunch because they didn't have half 3 of them. So, but Holker looked good. Foster made some catches, and then Taysom was playing there too. So for sure. All right. Well, Ross, anything we didn't touch on that you want to discuss, and then what you got cooking because busy week, and then we kind of get a little bit of some solace there.
Yeah, a little bit of rest. Not going to spend too much time of it resting, but yeah, we'll go a little bit there. I'm just gonna be ready for football to come back. I think we covered everything that I wanted to hit today. Thank you very much. That was awesome. If you want more, we'll be back tomorrow because we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this all 3 days.
Yes. And of course, if you aren't checking out Locked On Saints with Ross Jackson and getting your daily dose of Saints football, all the topics, he's got it in the background. I mean, come on, guys. It's just right there. Go check it out. Locked On Saints. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we have that technology yet, but check out Locked On Saints and check us out. All the written observations on Saints News Network, si.com/NFL/Saints, all the stories, all the things that we talked about. There's just a plethora of information to come out, right? And yes, plethora, as in 3 amigos plethora. So this is the fun time, man. It goes by and it'll only get better when it comes to training camp, but we'll be back. I don't know if it's same bat time, same bat channel tomorrow, but we'll keep you guys posted and let you know. And know there's tons of other shows that are going on right now, so it's a busy time, but we'll be back here in some sort of form or fashion. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure to tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your kids, tell your wife, all that fun stuff. Some people will catch that reference. Any parting thoughts, shots, remarks from Mr. Ross Jackson before we get out of here?
No, man, that was excellent. It was excellent. I can't wait to be back tomorrow. Do it all over again.
Yeah, you were keeping score today, right?
Right. Yeah. Today was this now makes it 4 Kendrick songs versus only 1 Drake song, and the 1 Drake song wasn't a diss, but so far all 4 Kendrick songs since OTAs have been disses. So K-Dot just keeps winning.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's the right call, right move for sure. Guys, you guys are always fantastic. We thank you so much for the support. We're only going to continue to do this stuff as long as you keep coming back, and we're growth mode. So trying to hit that 1K subscribers.
Almost there.
Yeah, almost there. Yeah, man. We haven't been along that long. We haven't even done 25 shows yet. We're just barely over, I think, 20. So we're going to keep on chugging along, and we're not even into training camp or the season. So it's only going to get bigger from here. So appreciate you guys tuning into us on this Tuesday evening. We know you got a lot of choices in what you do. And so your call is very important to us. But seriously, no, we appreciate you guys' support for real. And we couldn't do this without you. And again, we live by the creed. We love New Orleans. They love us back and such. And we're going to continue to work for you guys. So that's going to do it for this edition of Second and Saints. On behalf of Mr. Ross Jackson, I'm John Hendricks signing out. We will talk at you Wednesday very shortly. Have a good one, guys. Be good people.